Hello, I'm MrTieDye. Today I've been asked about doing the DeadPool design, so that's what we're going to tie up today. So to start with, I've made a template of the DeadPool Mask. And what I did is I used this plastic cutting board stuff. I buy them at the dollar store. It's just a chopping mat. So you get 2 of them in there for $1, and you can cut your things out. They're long lasting this way anyways. So I have my mask, my t-shirt. What I've done is soaked it in soda ash. I've spun it out so it's barely damp, and now I've centered it by tucking one sleeve inside the other, so I have the front of the t-shirt and the back of the t-shirt here. We're going to work on just the front of the t-shirt. And I will put the centering video. This is the tucking the one sleeve in the other. I'll put that down in the description. So if you need to brush up on how to fold the t-shirt in half or center the t-shirt. So what we're going to do is just fold that back part back out of the way, because we're just going to fold this on the front. And what I'm going to do is place that on there. I like to put my designs about 3 or 4 fingers down from the collar. So I'll line that up, and then we're going to use a washable marker. Also, I'm working on the inside of the t-shirt. Sometimes the washable markers won't come all the way out. So just to avoid having a random mark on the front of your t-shirt, if you work on the inside and something doesn't wash out, it's on the inside. So now we're going to draw the black part of his mask, and then he also has the white eyes in his mask. So what I've done on my template here is I've drawn a couple lines. Let's see if you can see those. Yeah, so these 2 lines here line up with where the eyeball is, and that allows me then to kind of draw the line in. So this here is just a center line of where the eyeball, the middle of the eyeball is. And then what I can do from there is draw half an eyeball in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start by folding that part in half and tying it with sinew. So what I'm going to do is turn this around, and then where I drew the extra lines here on this eyeball, I'm going to pick that up, fold that in half. And that way now we have just the eyeball folded right along that half line there. So what I'm going to do is little tiny accordion folds and fold that eyeball up. Oh, before we do that though, caught myself just in time. So this one here is going to be kind of a scrunch pleated design. It's not one that I can fold everything because I don't have a uniform shape here. So this one here can't be folded in half, this eyeball. It's, let's see. You can see that it's not a uniform shape here. So we're going to do kind of a scrunch fold like I do on, I think, the mushroom tee. So what we need to do is draw this same design on the back of the t-shirt. Now if you have a light board, you can do that. You can hold it up to a window. But if you have a template, like I made, then you can lay that on the t-shirt, and I can kind of see the lines through the t-shirt here. So I know that I have that in the same place. So now I can draw those same lines on so that when we're getting ready to do our dyeing, we have the same lines top and bottom. And you don't have to draw the eyeball on the back side because we're going to fold top end, or both sides of that from the top. That's that other half circle line that I drew. So there's our DeadPool, and we have that now on the front and the back of the t-shirt. Back out. So now we're going to go back to that fold that I was talking about. So we're going to fold this in half, the eyeball, and then accordion fold that. And then from there, I'm going to tie that with sinew, because this part of the eye, we want to leave that white. So I'm going to tie that up nice and tight with sinew. I'm going to wrap that around 3 times and pull on that. You want to make sure you don't pull too hard though, because you can stretch the t-shirt out since that's such a little spot there that we're tying off. So that's my excess, and this here is my long tail that I'm going to leave. I like to tie a little knot in those so that I know where I'm unwrapping from. Makes it easier to find. Oh, now it wants to unravel. So I'm going to do just a little half hitch on this, just to keep it in place. Okay. So now I'm going to fold the outer edge of the mask first. So we're just going to do about 1/2 inch pleats here. So now I'm just kind of lining my pleats up, make sure that I have a line nice and straight across there. We're going to tie that up with kite string. Kite string I'll usually wrap around a couple times and just pull that a little bit tight just to hold some tension in there. So I got that tied, and now I'm going to leave that attached. I'm not going to cut it off yet because it's just going to assist in the tying of this eyeball here on the mask. So what I do is just kind of straighten everything out, and then I'm going to work on the pleats right next to the edge here first. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but you can use a tool. I have a cuticle pusher here. It's got a nice flat edge on there, rounded edge, and I can use that to kind of move the t-shirt around in there. Try to line some of these pleats up. So this one's just a little trickier. Normally a design like this I would probably just stitch it to get the details, but I know a lot of people, they don't want to get into stitching, so this is a way that you can fold this design without stitching it. Just takes a little bit of extra work there of lining all of these creases up. And I can start tying this up, and since I have this tied on here already, I can just kind of line this up and wrap that right under. And then it's just a matter of, as you start gathering everything up, you want to make sure that you can still see your lines in here. So you might have to adjust this as you go, and then maybe redraw some of your lines top and bottom. Nice thing about kite string is that you can kind of adjust things as you go. Get something folded and then get the kite string wrapped around it, and then move on to the next area as you tighten things down. And then you just want to go along and try to line that line up as the best you can, so that you can see the whole line all the way around. Like I say, this here is a little bit tricky, but it can be done. And then that's where you can start getting in with your marker and start touching this up a little bit so that you can see that line and know where you're going to put your dyes all the way around here. And then of course this center part, we're going to leave that white. So once you get that wrapped up, then you can tie this off right here where we did our initial tie at. Okay, now on this other side, once again you just want to make sure you kind of open things up a little bit, find all of your lines, and redraw them as needed. Okay, so there is the DeadPool on the front and the back. Well, the top and the bottom, so that's the left and the right there. Now the rest of the tee, we're going to just scrunch it up. So whenever I have the sleeves tucked inside each other, the easiest thing to do with them then, let's zoom back out here. If you're working just on the front and you got the back of the tee here, if you take those sleeves and tuck them in their own hole, then you can just kind of scrunch them up in place. And sometimes I'll even give them just a little bit of a twist just to take up some of the extra fabric within that sleeve hole there. And get that whole area to lay kind of flat. And then you can just scrunch the rest of the t-shirt up, or you can do whatever else you like with the t-shirt. And there's our DeadPool design. I'll get things set up and we'll be back and put some dye on this. Okay, we're back with the DeadPool face. So we're going to get some dye put on here. So this here is the eyeball in the middle of the black for the eyeball, and then the rest of this here is going to be red, and I'm going to outline it in black. So we'll zoom in a little bit here just so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to start out with my black. Well, no, let's start out with the white. This here I call it white, but really it's just my clear water. It's thickened just a little bit, and that's going to help hold space here in this eyeball section. So I'm just going to drip some of this thick water on here and just let it soak in. And I have it tied with sinew, but this is something you could probably tie it with kite string also, since it's just such a little spot there. So what I'm going to do is just give that a squeeze to try to get some of that thickened water to squeeze to soak in further into there. But that's basically going to just make sure, and granted I'm using thick black dye, but we don't want the dye to seep up into there. So I'm going to go along first and outline this eyeball area. And this is the thick dye. I'll put a link to how to make the thick black dye down in the description. The one thing about the thick black dye is it doesn't soak in as much. I mean, it doesn't spread, but it doesn't also soak in. So whenever I use the thick black dye, I usually use my cuticle pusher to kind of poke it down inside a little bit further there. That just assists the dye to soak in. I'm also going to outline the mask. So I'm just going to run it right here along the outside edge. Okay, I will finish around the eyeball here. I'm just going to put all the way around the base and then just kind of poke it in around that whole area. We just want to get that whole eyeball area good and saturated on the mask. I'll put another drop of the water on here just to keep that nice and wet. Okay, and now for the other side, since we have that little eyeball sticking up, I'm just going to set this on my hand so that sticks in there between there. And then I'm going to put the dye on for my outline and then around the eyeball here. And then I can kind of smooth that around a little bit, but then I can also poke it down inside. And then the same thing for the outline. I use the cuticle pusher to push that line down. Okay, and then the other thing, you're using the thick black dye, especially when you have to hold it like that. Make sure you get it all off your hands before you touch too much more of the shirt so you don't spread that dye around too much. I can see I need a little bit more in different places, so you can just kind of poke that bottle down inside and then use the cuticle pusher to push it in deeper. And then the rest of the mask, we're just going to color in red. Okay, so I'm checking my dye saturation. I wanted to kind of soak up some of that excess dye because I want to put some thick black dye on it. But I can see that I still have just a little bit of white left in there. Not enough that I think that the dye is going to slowly spread, so I'm just going to add just a little bit more dye and just kind of poke it right inside the t-shirt. And then from there, I'm going to paint some thick black dye on. I want to add the black, but I don't want a whole bunch. So when I want that, usually what I'll do is just squirt a little bit of thick black dye on the table. And then I use just a sponge brush, one of them disposable ones. I mean, I rewash them and use them until they fall apart. But that way then you can paint just a little bit of dye on here, so you're just getting it just on the edges. And then you can see that there's still red, so I didn't completely saturate that with the black. This here is just a nice way to add just a little touch of color to it. Okay, and there is the Deadpool tee.